Welcome, JP.
I'm Chris.
And we are going to talk modulation.
Modulation. There's a lot of modulation out there in the world. We've got choruses, flangers, phasers, rotary speaker emulators, and even univibes. There's a lot out there.
Yeah, and it can be confusing. I think a lot of people don't really know the difference between the different parameters or what it actually does to your signal. I have been in this industry for a while now, and from a retail standpoint, interacting with customers, what actually is my chorus doing? What is my, what is a univibe and this little foggy area of what's actually happening to their signal? So we're just going to break it down. We're just going to take a look at them all and kind of explain it in a very generic way, not too in depth, but we'll get a little bit scientific in here, I guess. So, let's start with chorus.
Sounds good.
What do you got for chorus?
Great. So, chorus is really an effect that's meant to really double your sound. The original thought was that it would be more like a choir, if you will. So, kind of a lush sound, doubling it up. What happens with the chorus is your signal comes into the pedal, and the pedal basically splits it into two. With the one, it's running it straight through. The other, it's giving it a slight delay to it, kind of a medium to longer length, and that actually provides that chorus effect to it. It's kind of a watery dimension, if you will, so it's definitely a fun additive. You'd know this if you heard Nirvana's Come As You Are. Very popular chorus sound there.
Yeah. So here's a pretty standard chorus pedal that's out there. There's a few knobs on here, and just a quick rundown on what it is. Like this one has an added feature on it, so you have your low and high, which is basically an EQ. You can boost your lows and cut your highs, whatever. Level is just your overall volume of your effect. Rate, that's how fast is my chorus actually moving. The more rate you add to it, the more watery it's going to sound. And then depth is how much effect am I actually putting on here. So if I cut my depth way back, it's only going to adjust it just a little bit. But if I keep adding it on, it's going to make those peaks and valleys much more elaborate and noticeable. So when you turn your rate and depth all the way up, you're gonna know that this pedal is on. So that's just a basic rundown of how this pedal works. There's some other ones out there with other, parameters that you can control your chorus.
Sure, there's a lot of different things, as you may know by now, in the pedal world where you can take things to either a very simple level or you can get really, really involved. The MXR analog chorus is just a great standard cut for chorus. It definitely gets you there. If you'd like more, we definitely have more.
Oh yeah. So let's check out the actual signal and what this pedal does to your guitar's tone and signal.
Okay, we have the signal generator and the oscilloscope. So we have the signal generator being monitored directly by channel 1 on the oscilloscope, which is shown on the screen. We're also sending it out to the pedals and back into channel 2. There's channel 2. We can also put them both on at the same time. One thing to note is that the peaks and the valleys are all in the same place. That means they're in phase with each other.
So let's move on to flangers.
Sure, flanger, very noticeable. So flanger, again, we're taking your bypass signal, we're splitting it again. This time we're running one of it through a very short delay. It's giving a very saturated, outer spacey kind of tone to it. One of the things that's great about flanger is it was a happy accident. Back in the days of reel-to-reel tape, with recording, there was an engineer, so the story goes, put his thumb just on the edge of the flange of the tape machine, and it just started providing this odd warble to it. And so, lo and behold, we have flanger nowadays. You would definitely know flanger if you've ever heard Hart's Barracuda. Fantastic example of that. There's tons of flange everywhere you look, all through the 70s too. So it's kind of hard to hide from flange in the 70s.
So pretty cool that it has the recording accident background to it.
It just happened to be there, and people liked it.
So. So we actually have the Strymon Deco pedal here. We don't because we're out of stock, so Aaron will put this in later. But
pedal.
Yeah, it's a fantastic pedal, and it's one of those pedals that Strymon just always knocks it out of the park. But it has all the parameters of it that allow you to do that wow and flutter and flange and all that kind of stuff that you can do with flanger. But there's a very common thing that seems to be happening now is the double tracker.
Yes.
That's a very, very tight flange. Almost, it's right before you get almost into like a slapback.
It's just before slapback.
Yeah.
Yep.
So double tracking is in a way flanging, just without some of the extra wobbleness to it.
The rate is cut back.
Yeah. So that's kind of flanging in a nutshell. It's a very straightforward two signals. One's just kind of wobbling in and out and gives you that Hart Barracuda sound.
And it's a good thing to know. A lot of these are similar. So some of the things that happen with the pedal world is you get this great idea and you just can't leave well enough alone, so you just kind of split it. So we've had the chorus where we're splitting and throwing a long delay in between the two waves. Then we've got flange and we're splitting the signal again, and we're taking one of those and we're giving it that short delay between it, and it's just so fun. And as you'll see here in some of the others, that's kind of common. So they could all run together, and I would bet that some pedals you could probably get a decent chorus as well as a decent flange to a decent vibe out of it. It's a very similar circuit, but I really think that some of these that we're showing really are kind of the pinnacle for what they do.
Mm-hmm. All right, well, let's don't have it here, but we're going to take a look at what a flanger looks like and how it affects your signal. Let's talk phasers.
Phasers, fantastic. Once again, no shock and surprise. We're going to take your signal. We're going to take the one path of it, send it straight through, take the other path, completely send it out of phase. So what happens now is you've got these two waves that are kind of crashing against each other. The two dissonant phases, they're going to cancel each other out. What's left are going to be the notches which actually make our phasers sound. It's definitely a very signature sound. You would know this by listening to Van Halen's Ain't Talking About Love. That is phase for days.
So basically we have your
Classic.
Yes. Some might say quintessential.
Quintessential, the MXR orange.
Yeah, so these little orange boxes, that's your phase. There's phase 90, there's the script, there's the Eddie Van Halen version.
There is.
What's neat about them, they're simple to use. They usually have one knob on them, and that's it. And really all you're doing with that is just adjusting how out of phase your inverted signal is, and how much, I guess it actually is a dual purpose knob, because it adjusts that, but then it also adjusts the levels and the depths and everything. So it's kind of a one knob control, but they're just pre-doing the math for it, I guess.
One of the great things about phase and phaser pedals is just that it's so easy to use. You can dial in a little, you can dial in a lot. You can go from just kind of a mild, moderate effect. I've heard some great effect on keyboards and piano, or you can just go completely insane out the other end of it. And they're just fun, quintessential pedal.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Well, let's hook this one up and see what it does to your signal. All right, now we're going to talk rotary. This is an interesting one.
Yeah. So once again, very similar to kind of the flanger's happy accident in a way. Rotary in itself was originally, there was a man named Leslie who decided that he was a, story goes, he was a repairman for Hammond organs, and liked the Hammond organs, but felt they weren't big enough. So somehow he went and designed a speaker that actually moved in circles and circles and circles, and it sounded much bigger, basically due to Doppler effect, where sounds that are closer to you are going to sound louder, and as they go further away, they're going to sound lower. And as that speaker rotated, it kind of went in and out and in and out, and really gave this giant sound. Well, sooner or later, guitarists found these cabinets, and of course, any good guitarist is going to plug into anything they can to see how it sounds. And lo and behold, we've got rotary sounds. And today's pedals, we're really seeing those kind of come alive to add some interesting depth and almost tremolo vibrato to it. But like again, the sound kind of goes in and out, much like those old speaker cabinets. A great example would be the verses of Black Hole Sun by Soundgarden. You can definitely hear that all over that main rhythm track.
So here we have the Lex by Strymon. They do, once again, fantastic job at emulating the old rotary cabinets. So as you were saying, basically the old rotaries were, there was a speaker in the base of it, and then there was a horn up top. And so you were mentioning about vibrato and how it's very much like that, and trem, because your trem is your volume up and down, and your vibrato is your pitch up and down. This is both of those.
It's both.
Because as the horn comes to the front, you're getting the full spectrum of it, and it's super loud. As it's going to the back, you're cutting off part of your spectrum because you're only getting reflections, and that's taking part of your signal and getting rid of it. But also it's shooting backwards, so you don't have it in your face and it's not as loud. So it's kind of both of them together mixed in with a normal signal. So it adds a lot of movement to your overall guitar tone. And I think that's what was so appealing is, all right, I got a guitar tone, cool. But now, imagine playing at a club in the 50s, 60s, 70s where you didn't have sophisticated PA systems or total immersion or anything like that. This was this new thing that kind of made people like, hey, what's going on? You know, perk up and listen to like, that's an interesting sound.
Yeah, if you've ever been in a room with an actual Leslie cabinet, it just fills the room with sound. It is, I mean, you know, it is literally throwing sound all over the room, and it is immersive.
Yeah, and it even has its own characteristics to it that make it sound more organ-like to begin with.
Absolutely.
But then the other neat thing is you could drive them. So then you get this overdriven sound. So we're getting off the topic of modulation, just celebrating the whole fact of, you know, Leslie cabinets. But your Lex rotary would be a fantastic option to get that rotary option or feel to your tone. But then there's a couple other ones that, you know, you can always check out. They're a little bit more affordable. Electro-harmonix has one. What is it? Lester?
Dunlop Rotovibe. That's a great one.
Boom.
Yeah.
So let's hook this up. Take a look at what it does to the signal. All right, we are going to check out a Univibe now.
Univibes.
And go over what is this Univibe?
This crazy Univibe thing that everybody's talking about. So we've talked about the rotating speaker and that aspect of it. And the Univibe is, I'd like to call it one of those happy accidents again, but it really became its own thing. It was originally created to really mimic that rotating speaker action. And what happened was it just kind of came out a little off in a way. So it's got, it's using phasing filters in there. It's a rotating speaker with phasing filters. And as you add in kind of tremolo to kind of make it this interesting choppy wave, you add, you know, a little bit of the chorus of those cascading filters into it. It becomes swirly. It becomes everything. It's just a crazy effect. Machine Gun, Jimi Hendrix, 100% fantastic example of that. It's the Univibe can be so expressive and at the same time almost run away with sound. It can really get you lost. It's great.
This is kind of your all modulation.
It is. Throw them all together.
Yeah, that's really what it is. I mean, if you
it's
were
a great put about that.
If you were trying to hook up a lot of your modulation pedals, you would probably inadvertently stumble onto a standardized Univibe sound. So, like you were saying, it's to mimic the rotary, but they're typically on Univibe pedals. You do have the option to switch between a chorus and a vibrato. So the vibrato option will give it more of the pitch altering feel to the modulation, and the chorus will give it more of that watery feel. So this is the good vibes from electro-harmonix, and you have that switch here, which is your chorus, vibrato, volume, intensity.
Intensity.
What do you think intensity means? Yes, it's just how much is going on, and then speed. How fast is it going?
That's going to happen.
Yeah. Wow, and there's even another one for speed and intensity, so you can adjust that. Oh, from the expression, because you can adjust it on the fly. That's kind of cool. So yes, Jimi Hendrix.
Such a Univibe.
You gotta have a Univibe if you want to have that extra Hendrix feel to your riffs. So let's hook this up and see what it does to our signal. so we just talked about all this modulation. We checked out some pedals. We saw what it does to the signal. Hopefully we cleared a little bit of the fog that is modulation. But another common question is, where do I put these pedals back?
Yeah, where in the world do these things go?
Yeah.
So, I'm always of the school, throw it wherever you like it and see what you think works out best for you. Traditionally, however, modulation effects, folks are putting those things after the drives, kind of in the, what I call like the back half of your pedal board. So you've got all of your drives and your heavy signal processing up front, your crunches, your fuzzes, all the good stuff. Then you're coming into modulation land. You've got this great kind of middle area where you can throw your modulation in right before kind of your delays and verbs to end out your signal chain. If you've definitely got the equipment and you're technically savvy enough and you want to try it, look on the back of your amp and look to see if you have an effects loop, because I would bet that these modulation pedals, as long as your verbs and your delays, would be very happy there. Yeah?
Yeah. So back in the day, of course, they didn't have all these things. You
just jam it right in the front and go.
Yeah, we were talking about that during the break. It gets very wishy-washy when you put it all on the front end. Another thing to keep in mind, people like Hendrix and some of the guys back in that time weren't as elaborate with their pedal boards as we are now. A lot of you guys have 15, 16 pedals on your board. They had 2. So it wasn't overly complicated, 2 or 3. But so basically what happens is when you start stacking some of these or adding this in, and why you'd want it in your effects loop and why you typically put your reverbs and delays back there is when you're hitting the front end of your amp with your drives, it's affecting your tubes in a certain way, and it's allowing them to break up a certain way. When you start messing with the peaks and valleys of your guitar signal, that's when you start altering how that tube is going to react to breakup. So it can get kind of, well, in a way, it actually creates its own phasing issues, because you might be hitting it with, the front end of your drive pedal, and then you're hitting with the phaser, but then as that's coming down, your tube is trying to react in a certain way, and then it drops down and it's losing its crunch. So it can get a little messy. Yeah, a little messy in there. So if you throw it in your effects loop, all you're doing is affecting your power tubes at the end, which are generally running pretty hot and are adjusting to that a little bit more efficiently than the front end of your amp. So that's why you use your effects loop.
Blend in all that good modulation stuff towards the end, so you're not getting muddy in the front. That's great.
Exactly. And one thing for the bass players out there: can you use modulation? Yes.
Oh, if you're a bass player, you've used a chorus pedal.
Yeah.
You definitely have. I know you have. Don't lie.
Yeah. Bass is actually really great with modulation because it adds this much bigger dimension to your overall sound. You kind of fill in the mix.
It's true.
Most guitar players want to be front and center and happy-go-lucky, look at me. The bass player has to fill in all the rest. And you slap a chorus on there and you can really add a lot of dimension to your bass. Case in point, listen to Tool.
Right.
Tool has a very wide spectrum bass signal because he's using some forms of modulation in there, and it's in the forefront of the song, and it's kind of what makes it. So definitely, bass players, check out some modulation pedals. It's really fun, and it can just basically take your band to a whole other level.
That's awesome.
And guitar players,
everybody check out modulation.
Modulation's fun.
All right, so we just took a look at some modulation effects. Hopefully you learned a little bit. Hopefully we learned a little bit. Took a look at some pedals. Called out the nerd alert and got up some sine waves. Took a look around, a little bit for everybody. It's definitely a good time. So thanks for being here with us. Really do appreciate that.
Yeah, check us out online. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. You can hop on our website, ToneTailors.com. If you're in the area, stop in and let's play.